Call the meeting to order. Again, as always, I'd ask that you extend the same courtesy and respect to anyone that you would expect in return. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. When you hear the buzzer sound, we'd ask that you stop speaking so it will give everyone else an opportunity to speak. And again, we'd ask that everyone extend the same courtesy and respect to the next person if that's what you would like to have in return. With that being said, let's do roll call. Terry Klein is not here. County Controller O'Connor.
Ryan Herbinko, not voting, but here for Corey O'Connor.
Judge Lazara is unable to attend. Her daughter has some college visits that she has to accompany her daughter on, so she will not be attending. County Executive Richard Fitzgerald.
Steve Polarski.
Abaz Kamara is not present. Sheriff Kevin Kraus.
Present.
Gail Moss.
Present.
Pat Katina.
This is Bethany Hallam. I'm here, but I would also like to object to the participation of illegal designees. Mr. Herbinko and Mr. Polarski, the county executive nor the controller get a designee on this board, so I would ask that they be removed.
Thank you. So with that being said, we do not have a quorum tonight, so there'll be no voting, but we will go through the agenda except for voting on the minutes from the last meeting.
Point of order, Judge Housey?
Yes, ma'am.
Why do we not have a quorum?
It's my understanding we don't have a quorum
I know, I would just like you to explain to me why.
because people didn't come to the meeting.
But I count 6 people up here. Are you saying that 2 of them are not on this board?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many do we need for a quorum? Do we have a quorum? I thought we did. So, do we have a quorum? I mean, how many do we need?
We don't.
Doesn't seem that we have a quorum, as everyone's.
But why is that? I'm just not understanding.
Why do you feel that we do?
Well, I'm just counting 6 people sitting up at the board, and I'm wondering why that's not a quorum.
I don't know. I thought it was, you needed 7, perhaps?
You need 5 members for a quorum.
5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fair enough. Then we have a quorum.
No, we actually don't, because those 2 people at the end are not on the board.
Right, but they're here. So we have 5. We have enough people for a quorum. So with that being said, we will start with the community corrections. Passages to recovery. And as you're walking up, ma'am, I'd like to say we had the opportunity as a board to meet the liaison. She was hired on Monday, so we met with her briefly before this meeting began. It's my understanding that she has met with the jail and she'll be beginning her work there next week. But she was kind enough to come to the meeting and she'll be staying for the meeting. So with that being said, ma'am, if you could please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Hello, everybody. My name is Shayna Givner. First name, S as in Sam, H-A-Y-N as in Nancy, A. Last name, Givner, G as in George, I-V as in Victor, N as in Nancy, E-R. Passages to Recovery currently has 37 patients. 26 are in 3.5 level of care. 11 are currently in TLF. We have had 10 discharges within the last month. There has been no overdoses within the last month. And clients continue to participate in Parents in the Know through PAR, and they are also participating with various programs provided by UPMC, such as TRIM, which is trauma-based, and MAYA, which is based in grief and loss. Any questions?
Ms. Howell.
Yes, hi, thank you for coming. I have been receiving reports a lot specifically over the past month from folks who are incarcerated at Passages who are speaking about being responsible for preparing the meals because there's a shortage of staff members who are responsible for preparing the meals. Can you kind of speak to both what the procedures are for meal preparation at Passages and also if that work is supposed to be done and being done by incarcerated people?
That would not be something I could speak on today. However, I could be prepared to present that to you next month.
Okay, yes, I would really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And if it's you next month, I know they've been switching the people around a lot, so can you just make sure whoever comes next month can speak to that?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I do have a question, ma'am. You indicated that 10 people had been discharged.
Yes.
Can you kind of quantify what that looks like? When you say a person's discharged, is that always because they've completed the program, or is that always because they have failed to complete the program and they've been asked to leave?
Well, I can break it down for you. I do
Okay.
have it written here. We have had 3 that have left AMA. We have had 2 that were revoked back to the jail. 3 were paroled, and 2 were successful
Okay. Okay, when you say they left AMA,
against advice. So they were.
medical advice.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Howell?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a follow-up to that. So my understanding was that they didn't have the choice to leave voluntarily. So the 3 folks who left AMA, are they charged with escape?
Yes.
Okay, so
They were
it's not
escape.
just AMA, it's 3 people who left and were charged with escape.
Yes. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
I misspoke.
All righty. Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.
The Renewal Center?
Good afternoon, Adam Zach, reporting for the Renewal Center, last name Z-A-K. We currently have 107 county reentrants in our programs. The breakdown is 76 work release males, 7 work release females, 15 males in inpatient treatment, and 9 females in inpatient treatment. Our employment rate is currently 51%, and the average hourly wage is $17.79. For the past monthly period, that being June 16th through July 15th, we had 41 new reentrants come to our program. 18 reentrants were successful completions, 12 were unsuccessful, that being 7 revocations and 5 escapes. Also for the month of July, we had 9 reentrants successfully complete our inpatient treatment programs. There have been no deaths nor no overdoses in the past month. In addition to the regular community service sites our men and women volunteer at, on July 7th, we had a large group of individuals work the Liberty Mile Run, and this coming Saturday, they'll be helping out with the African American Heritage Day Parade.
I do have one question for you, sir. You spoke, you indicated that approximately 51% of your residents are employed. Can you speak to the challenges or the issues that have impacted that number? I mean, why don't you have 80%, or is there ever a time when you have 100%? What have been your challenges in getting more people employed?
Getting their state ID. A lot of these guys, they come, they go to the jail, they had nothing, and they're pretty much starting from the beginning. They don't have clothes. We have to help them out with clothing, money, getting their IDs. A lot of places will not hire them because of their record, whatever their particular charges are. And some of them aren't from the Pittsburgh area. They're from out of state, and they got a charge, and they got put to the Allegheny County Jail. So now they're all of a sudden in Western Pennsylvania trying to look for work.
Understood. Question. Is there like a blackout period? You know, if a person goes to the Renewal Center, is there a period of time that they are prohibited from working until they've maybe done a certain amount of programming? I'm just not familiar with the program.
Usually the blackout period is about 1 to 2 weeks. They do a life skills, it's called life skills.
Okay.
So basically they do a resume workshop, they do interviewing skills. So that usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks.
And after that 2-week period, if they have the identification and the incentive, or the desire, the willingness to work, then they are permitted to work after 2 weeks if they
Yes.
choose to.
Yes.
And they're able to gain employment.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? Ms. Howell?
Yes, Mr. Zach, you talked about no overdoses, no deaths in the past month. Great news. But can you speak to if you had any medical emergencies? Like, was anyone transported from your facility to the hospital?
I believe we had 10 instances where individuals from the county program went to the hospital. I think I can't say like how many were transported by ambulance, but 10 went to the emergency room.
Okay, and if an ambulance doesn't transport someone who is sent to the hospital, how do they get there?
They usually get there on their own.
Okay, so it's just somebody who was maybe out in the community and needed to go to the hospital.
Sometimes it happens at their work site, sometimes it happens inside the facility. They could have chest pains, they could have trouble breathing, they could have an injury. So,
And they take themselves.
yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Electronic monitoring.
Good afternoon. Renan Harris, first name R-E-N-A-W-N, last name H-A-R-R-I-S. I'm here on behalf of the Electronic Monitoring Program for Allegheny County Adult Probation. At the end of the reporting period, we had approximately 616 individuals on a house arrest bracelet. In addition, we had 91 individuals successfully complete that program, and 7 individuals were removed for violations only.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Ms. Hallam?
Were all those 7 people who were removed from electronic monitoring sent to jail?
Ms. Hallam, at this time, I don't have that information to present to you. I'm covering for the actual manager for electronic monitoring. I can get that information for you if you like.
Please, I would appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm curious, what is the longest period that a person could serve on electronic monitoring? Roughly, just in terms of what you typically see.
Yeah, roughly 90 days,
90 days?
the minimum.
Minimum, what's the max?
Oh,
Could it be as
that
much
could be
as
dependent. It could be
4 years, 3
years.
Could be years?
So, like I said, it all depends on that sentencing judge and what they feel is appropriate.
Okay.
But like I said, any information I can get for you, but I'm not prepared at this time to get that information.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I
That's
apologize.
okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're now at the part of the agenda where we're going to have public comments. Again, if your name is signed on the sheet, you'll be permitted to make a public comment. I just ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. When you hear the buzzer, we'd ask that you quit speaking, because we want to give everyone the opportunity to speak, and we want everyone to have the same amount of time. So please be mindful of that. With that being said, the first speaker is John Kinstowitz. And please state your full name, spell your last name for
Yes,
the record.
John Kenstowitz, Kenstowicz.
You know what, Mr. Kinstowitz, I apologize. I grabbed this page first. You're actually number 13. Let me do the other page first. I'm sorry. My apologies.
That's fine.
Forgive me. I don't know. You know what? We'll just do it that way. You know what? Just go ahead. You should go. Sorry about that. You should go. You're signed first
Still
on
got
the
3
last
minutes.
page, but that's fine.
I still get 3 minutes, right?
Absolutely. You can. Absolutely. All right, we'll
Okay.
start you right now.
Okay. The jail administration will provide the mortality review and the administrative review of the death of Douglas Bonomo to the Jail Oversight Board. According to NCCHC Standard JA09, the jail administration is required to conduct a clinical mortality review of Douglas Bonomo's death and an administrative review. According to the recent NCCHC assessment of deaths at our jail, and I quote, Allegheny County doesn't do mortality reviews. An important question is, how is the jail going to learn from each of these deaths at the jail if the jail administration does not do mortality reviews? If the jail administration started doing mortality reviews of each death since April of 2020, how many deaths could have been saved if these reviews were done? Recently, a board member asked Warden Harper about whether the mortality reviews were being done. His response was that he was working on it, pretending that recently he first became aware of the requirement to do a mortality review. The standard has been in existence since 2018. The jail has been violating this standard since 2018. Now, the board can remember that last year in June and July, I presented to the board a public comment asking whether the mortality reviews had been done. Either Warden Harper was not listening during my presentation, or at that point, he was aware that the mortality review was required and chose not to do a mortality review. I want to repeat that. Either Warden Harper was not listening during my presentation, or at that point he was aware that the mortality review was required and chose not to do a mortality review. Concerning the mortality review, we are talking about life and death, and not whether the gym has adequate athletic equipment. Where was the Jail Oversight Board during this critical time when review should have been done? For these reasons, it is essential that oversight be provided regarding these reviews. The residents' families, and the public need to be assured that these reviews are being done and being done according to specifications of NCCHC. Thus, the Jail Oversight Board can no longer be denied access to this information when someone dies at our jail. By state statute, the Jail Oversight Board is entitled to these records, and I quote, "The books, papers, and records of the prison, including but not limited to the papers and records of the warden and those related to individual inmates, shall at all times be available for inspection by the board." PIN and APA's 30 coalition members have been requesting this for many months. It is now up to the JOB, who has the legal authority to demand that these reviews be done and submitted to the JOB. Okay, I'm going to follow the rules.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Kinstowitz. Pat Murray.
Pat Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Just continue. If the jail administration, the county executive, and the solicitor's office continue to play this game that the JOB is not entitled to records when someone dies, then I believe the new administration, the new warden, and the new JOB will see that saving lives and following the statute and the NCCHC standard is the right thing to do. New section, the exorbitant high rate of death at Allegheny County Jail and the need to meet. According to the Department of Justice, the rate of deaths for a jail the size of our jail is between 2 and 3 a year, though there's been an increase in the last couple years. The 20 deaths recorded since April of 2020 far exceeds the national average and is directly related in part to the staffing crisis at our jail and the high staff turnover. It is important to note that all recent deaths have been taken place on the weekend at a time when there is more of an absence of staff. Warden Harper normalizing the number of deaths as a national problem and projecting our exceedingly high rate of mortality as a phenomenon that is happening all over the country distracts from the staffing crisis and the many problems that have been brought to light from the results of the 2 job satisfaction surveys you are aware of. PIN and the APA Coalition want to meet with individual members of the board to discuss the survey results, especially in light of the recent death of Douglas Bonomo. Bringing frontline staff to the table took a lot of work, and now it's the board's turn to work with us to answer the issue brought up in the survey. Let's move forward together at this very important time in our jail's history. New section. Dr. Brinkman and Deputy Warden Toba have decided not to meet with PIN regarding the survey. In the interest of collaboration, PIN was very willing to listen to Dr. Brinkman's and Deputy Warden Toba's thoughts about the important issues raised in the survey. Obtaining all perspectives and defining and solving a problem is what can make interventions more successful. It is unfortunate they have not responded to our request for a meeting yet. We are still open to meeting with both Dr. Brinkman and Deputy Warden Toma to discuss the survey results. A consequence of their decision is that this report that is being presented to you is solely based on the voices of the frontline staff. Frontline staff have brought valuable information to our attention that we must process and develop strategies with others to find ways to implement needed change at our jail.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll now hear from Ann McStay.
Ann McStay, last name M-C-S-T-A-Y. There's a goal that we have The state of Pennsylvania will work with county officials and jail healthcare staff regarding their being assigned work duties that they believe their licensure protocols violate their license protocols. In essence, a person's license is their livelihood. A violation on their record can affect their pay, their advancement, and their success in finding another job. The survey mentions at different times that this licensure issue is a significant stressor which affects healthcare staff's financial and emotional security and the relationship with administration. They have said in the survey that this issue of licensure violations is a significant factor regarding why we have 94 vacancies. The State Board of Social Work Licensing has said that it will not intervene on allegations made in a job satisfaction survey, but will intervene in an actual case. Penn was advised to contact our state representatives. Penn recognizes the importance of finding a resolution to the important licensure question. Therefore, Penn is undertaking a letter-writing campaign to our state representatives and is interested in meeting with state officials, the Jail Oversight Board, and any other county official to resolve the matter. Penn sees a large turnover of staff at the jail and this licensure problem as a major contributor to the exceedingly high death rate at the jail. Any healthcare administrator who engages in acts of reprisal against a frontline staff for participating in the survey will be terminated. This is a goal for rules going forward. Penn and the APA Coalition have gone to great lengths to bring frontline staff to the table via the survey, et cetera. Just because healthcare administration might not approve of the results from the survey, that gives them no right to intimidate or engage in acts of reprisal against frontline staff who participated in the survey. The only way the board is going to make informed decisions regarding the jail is for the frontline staff to be allowed, with no threat of reprisal, to reveal what they think is really going on at the Allegheny County Jail. The recommendation is that any administrator who threatens or engages in an act of reprisal in situations where a staff member is bringing light to a practice at the Allegheny County Jail, such as in a survey, will be terminated by the new administration. That protects the people who are telling their experience. Thank you.
Now I'll hear from Ronnie Zolke.
Yeah.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
so that's Ronnie, and it's RONNIE, COOK, Z as in zebra, UHLKE.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So based upon the survey responses, staff have stated that the schedules that they are assigned are too overloaded and that it is not possible to provide care to all those residents as needed. A nurse being assigned some days to 5 units was mentioned at different times in the survey. This is way beyond the capacity to provide quality service to all the residents on all these units. There is a precedent of administration doing frontline work. Laura Williams, the previous healthcare director, and her administrative staff performed frontline duties at various times to ease the burden of frontline staff. Administrative staff and frontline staff could together develop a priority list of what patients are in the most need. There would be several benefits to instituting this practice of administration and performing such duties. The first would be administrative staff would be provided with a frontline experience and orientation of the many challenges of a frontline job. Second, instead of conflict, staff and administration will be more aligned to a common purpose and help ease the staffing crisis. Third, the threat of staff licensure violations would be less. Fourth, working frontline duties, administrative staff have an incentive to limit staff turnover as much as possible. And fifth, frontline staff stress levels would come down. So the recommendation here is that the new administration will assign frontline duties to administrative staff until the staffing crisis has come to an end. On another subject, I want to move on to pay increases for healthcare staff and correctional officers. The survey revealed that there is a pay determining factor affecting a staff person's decision to leave or to continue with the ACJ. Since the vacancy is at about 94, and that is a recruiting class of correctional officers who leave after the first year, it is paramount that pay raises be competitive with other markets. I want to go over some of the pay, hourly pay, and then what's suggested online, and you'll have all this information. I don't expect anybody to be writing it down. On RN, making on average $36.38, when Indeed says that the hourly rate should be $43.45. An LPN, $29.96. The suggested by Indeed is $36.70. On MHS, at $26.96, ZipRecruiter says that number should be $29.28. DNA, $26.96. Comparably, is that my time? Okay, my recommendation is that you seriously consider pay increases for jail staff and to give jail staff more of a reason to want to continue to work. Thank you.
Laura Perkins.
Hi there, Laura Perkins, that's Perkins.
Thank you.
Instead of continuing to use a check-the-box online training using a group process at times will be used to maximize participants' learning and opportunities to ask questions and provide feedback. The staff survey revealed the limits of online trainings, which many people felt that in isolation with no opportunity to talk about their work experiences at the jail was not that helpful, especially in topics such as suicide prevention, de-escalating a person in mental health crises, or strategies for defense. Lindsay Hayes, the foremost expert on suicide prevention, echoes this need for an informative group process training that is relevant to the needs of its participants. Quote, "Suicide prevention is all about collaboration and training that is reduced to an individual sitting alone and watching a DVD on a desktop screen simply to comply with an accreditation standard has questionable value." An important question is who should facilitate the trainings. The county sent out a bid in October of 2021, RFP 8611, Correctional Incident Response Program Development and Training, and no one responded to the bid. Upon questioning Warden Harper at a JOB meeting, it was revealed that the RFP had limited exposure, that no local providers were even aware of the bid. Though mental health first aid training has been provided at the jail, a more informed training on crisis intervention, especially for correctional officers, could be very helpful in de-escalating people in a mental health crisis. A classroom experience in which staff could provide scenarios of the challenges they have faced in de-escalation could be very relevant to what staff needs. Recommendation. The new administration will institute some trainings based in group process, discussing actual ACJ case scenarios that will be facilitated by an expert in the field. The county will send out a bid again for RFP 8611. Thank you.
Fran McDowell.
Hello, Fran McDowell, McDowell. The mode of communication between administration and frontline staff will change from a top-down authoritarian model to a collaborative and supportive model using the very positive aspects of a bottom-up style of communication. Both the correctional officer and the healthcare staff surveys mentioned in many different places the authoritarian nature of jail administration and healthcare administration, and the lack of opportunity for frontline staff to provide input to policy and practice with their expertise. Considering Dr. Brinkman's lack of any medical background, the conflict between healthcare staff and administration concerning licensure, and the frequent use of forced overtime by administration for correctional officers, a collaborative model is even more important. The following recommendations in the survey were made to improve the communication and relationship between administration and frontline staff. Number one, administration will be more visible in the blocks and have less time in their office. Number two, Administration will follow along on an entire shift with frontline staff to observe the many time-sensitive challenges frontline staff experience. Number 3, administration will start to use the camera also as a learning tool in which support and teaching can be provided. Number 4, during town hall meetings, frontline staff will be given ample time to respond and ask questions. Number 5, administration will problem solve and work with frontline staff regarding being assigned duties that frontline staff believe violate licensure protocols. Number 6, administration will post a suggestion box and respond with a warm affect when the frontline staff provide suggestions regarding improvements to be made in the operations of the jail. The recommendation: the new administration will change the mode of communication in the jail so that a more bottom-up style of communication will be used.
Thank you, ma'am. Joe Shaughnessy, I'm sorry. Shaughnessy, maybe? Sorry about that.
Yeah, Shaughnessy, SHAUGHNESSY. No worries. A plaque commemorating Dr. Michael Patterson's dedication and commitment to quality care for the residents of the Allegheny County Jail will be installed in the medical unit of the jail. Dr. Michael Patterson worked for many years as medical director of the Allegheny County Jail. He was a champion of quality care and an advocate to improve medical services at the jail. He inspired many staff who knew him to focus on the needs of the people to be served in spite of the many barriers to providing quality care. John initiated the idea of creating a plaque of Dr. Patterson to celebrate his legacy. Judge Clark and Terry Klein, who wholeheartedly supported the idea. John had worked with Dr. Patterson for 26 years on the psych units at psychiatric hospitals and at Dr. Patterson's outpatient office on Bay Tree Street. John witnessed the deep respect Dr. Patterson gave to his patients and Dr. Patterson's highly developed skill in talking and working with people who had serious mental health disorders. John worked with the Pittsburgh Trophy Company and Warden Harper to create the plaque. John's deceased wife, Ann McCafferty, designed the plaque and created the words placed on the plaque. The installment of the plaque was delayed because of the pandemic. The family was going to be invited for the event. At the last JOB meeting, John asked Warden Harper about whether the plaque had been installed. Warden Harper responded that the plaque had not been installed and further stated that the plaque would not be installed. When John asked why, he did not respond. The recommendation is that the new administration will install Dr. Patterson's memorial plaque in the medical unit of the ACJ. Dr. Patterson's family will be invited for the event. The medical unit at ACJ will be named in honor of Dr. Patterson. Dr. Patterson literally gave his life to the work at the ACJ. After working many shifts at ACJ, Dr. Patterson came home, had a heart attack, and died at the age of 59. His legacy of providing a deep respect for the patients he served and an unwavering dedication to provide a quality service to people in need is deep within the hearts and minds of many people who knew him. A daily reminder of seeing his name on the jail's medical unit will be empowering and give healthcare workers inspiration to follow in Dr. Patterson's legacy. A recommendation is that the new administration will commemorate our jail's medical unit as the Michael D. Patterson Medical Unit. Dr. Patterson's family will be invited to the event. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Bonavolia.
Sharon Bonavolia, Bonavoglia.
Thank you.
Yet another death at the jail. It is clearly way beyond time to establish and learn from exit interviews with all medical staff and COs leaving the Allegheny County Jail. Please institute those exit interviews as soon as possible. Now is the time to learn what ex-employees have to say that may well save lives and might have saved the lives of those who have already died. A year ago, I came to my first JOB meeting, and I stood up and I asked why Warden Harper still had his job. 4 more deaths at the jail since then, and Warden Harper is still here. Why? PIN and the APA Coalition are requesting that members of our organizations be part of any search committee established to find Warden Harper's much-needed and immediate replacement. And now, if you are able, please rise for the reading of the names of the dead. You're fine right where you are, ma'am. Bless your heart. Richard Lenhart, Robert Blake, Cody Still, Daniel Pastoric, John Brady, Martin Buchek, Robert Harper, Vinkley Harris, Justin Brady, Paul Allen, Roger Millspaw, Paul Spisak, Gerald Thomas, Jerry Lee Ross Jr., Victor Joseph Zelenek, Ronald Andrus, Anthony Tallada, William Spencer, James Washington, Damon Leroy Kays, Tim Menino, Douglas Bonamo.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll now hear from Kina James. Kina, is it Kina? My apologies. I thought it was Kina. My apologies. Kina, sorry about that. Not intentional. My apologies.
Kina James, last name James.
Thank you.
The coalition organizer for the Alliance for Police Accountability. So, just want to talk about a couple things really quickly. In regard to Thomas William Spencer's, the third's case, the parents still have not received any information regarding their son's death. No one from the Renewal Center has made any attempt to contact the family. No one from the detective's office has made any attempt to contact the family, although the family has reached out many times. Second, Secondly, I want to note that Warden Harper and the jail administration are still to this day violating every part of the solitary confinement law. We get calls regularly. Just in case you forgot, there's your reminder. We will be moving to send emails to the entire jail oversight board moving forward. In regards to Douglas Bonomo's death recently at the Allegheny County Jail, Warden Harper said, and I quote, "All deaths are a tragedy. We take each one very seriously and are continuing to work with our partners to increase surveillance and take other measures to address preventable deaths." Preventable being the main word, right? The amount of increased deaths just this year shows the last thing you do is take this seriously. The fact that you then compared the 20 deaths at Allegheny County Jail to 3 jails elsewhere shows you do not take this seriously. One of the jails you mentioned holds twice the amount of people, and another holds 6 times the amount of people, but you failed to mention that. Your focus should be on the Allegheny County Jail. Your focus should be on keeping our people alive. Your focus should be on making sure that people with broken limbs are not going 10 days without medical attention, and making sure your staff are not the individuals doing the breaking. Your focus should be less on bogus responses. Your time should not be spent on trying to get individuals' charges dropped after they die in your jail so that you can avoid being held responsible. Your focus should not be on researching deaths in other jails, but the deaths in the jail you're responsible for. Your focus should be on doing your job, which is where you lack the most focus, if you have any at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my apologies for mispronouncing your name. Tanisha Long.
Tanisha Long, Tanisha Long. You're welcome. Where's Rich? Did he? It's a matter for the courts, never mind. So, in Warden Harper's press release, he mentioned a few things that were misleading. When he talks about the way people die in the jail, he says the last death in housing was in September. Like these people have anywhere else to be. They're housed in the jail. He likes to make the differentiation between intake and housing so that you focus on the September part and not the fact that it happened just a few months ago. Of the dishonest things that Warden Harper often says, the only thing he said that stuck out is the word preventable. He told on himself. He said, there's more we could have done. We could have increased surveillance. Do you need to be on your phone right now? Because these are public comments. I'm sorry if your text messages are more important, but you're hearing testimony from the public, which is why it's important that people show up, and which is why we can't send illegal designees, because the people who need to hear it most disrespect the families by not showing up. So, if you can stay off your phone, that would be fantastic. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. As I was saying, preventable is the key word. Warden Harper mentioned that they do things to increase surveillance. This person was housed on the mental health pod, which means that he probably was not being surveilled the way he was supposed to be, or wouldn't have had to wait till 7 a.m., which is typically a shift change, for someone to find him. On the weekend, when people are dying, is also the same weekend when the jail is shut down for 23 hours. In December, I spoke to the Jail Oversight Board about Rachel Bridgman, a person who had been in almost identical circumstances as the person who passed away. So when we worked to get out of the jail, because we recognized that the conditions in the jail were exacerbating her mental health issues, and we understood that if she continued to stay in those conditions, she would likely be dead. We warned you that if they did not change their practices and policies, like taking away phones, tablets, visits, and the ability to leave the cell for people who have been placed on mental health tiers 4 and 5, that their mental health conditions would deteriorate and that they would have more deaths on their hands. Warden Harper went and he admitted that they take these things away from people on those mental health tiers. What do you think happens when people can't make calls to their family? What do you think happens when people can't use a telephone? How are they contacting their lawyers? Rachel Bridgman wasn't able to, and I doubt this person was able to either. According to the warden's report, there have been 253 ER runs this year. I think that's a lot. As he said, for a jail of his size. I'm taking back the time I had to tell him to stay off his phone. Reporters are doing the work that Warden Harper should be doing by providing us transparent reports and chasing down autopsies, 2 seconds, and chasing down autopsies. So I don't think it would be that difficult to do as one of the jails that Warden Harper cited in his press release and provide transparent reports and mortality reports of the deaths of people inside the jail. Thank you. Thanks.
Marion Damick.
New subject. In fact, we're not talking about warden for a change. I'm talking about you and the court. And actually, I'm taking some responsibility because I haven't raised this issue. I hadn't raised it on all the times I've been at the board. And this is a responsibility you had, that I knew you had, and I didn't say anything, and it has to do with Schumann. Never did I see Schumann appear on the papers. Never did I hear you talk about Schumann until, in fact, even then. Now, I'm talking about the late Schumann, so as we say. Schumann that got so bad because nobody was overlooking them, which I think is in your name. Nobody was overlooking them, and the state had to shut them down. So where are they now? Of course you know where they are. Best place for them. 22 male juveniles are in this jail right as we speak. Best place for them? No. Or do you think, oh, good, they're not out there. What are they learning in the jail? They have a dog. That is something that came up new. A good dog. Woof, woof. I like to, he doesn't teach, though. I think it's a male. It doesn't teach. Somebody has to teach. Somebody has to get these kids out of the jail, an innocent institution that will work for children themselves, juveniles, to keep juveniles from becoming into the jail as adults. That's what your responsibility is. And what I'm hoping this audience and everybody else will talk to the two people who are going to be running for the county executive office, both of them. Ask a question. What are you going to do, one, about the jail, and two, about where the youth should be? That is vital. They are children, and they're in the jail, this jail. I'm ashamed. I'm really ashamed that I thought things were going well. My fault. But I'm not going to take the whole fault. Somebody should have brought it up. Somebody didn't. Beware.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's it.
Thank you so much. We'll now hear from Mohammed Nasir.
My name is Muhammad Ali Nasir. I go by Manny. I'm the Advocacy and Policy Civic Engagement Coordinator for One Hub Media, and I'm one of many who table weekly at the ACJ. Welcoming and providing resources to at least 38 people since the last JOB meeting. I'm here to represent them and those who remain incarcerated, which include my family and friends. I was stunned this morning when I saw an article by the PINJ stating that Allegheny County has paid private security consultant Joseph Garcia the full amount his company sought in a lawsuit over unpaid invoices. A nearly $215,000 payment came despite still unanswered questions over Joseph Garcia's training methods, credentials, and the scope of work at the Allegheny County Jail during the summer of 2021. That was interesting to me because, believe it or not, I was one of those people asking questions and raising concerns. In 2021, I participated in a press conference calling on the JOB to cancel the contracts and to ban Garcia from the ACJ. And today, I'm asking the board to motion to remove all remaining weaponry and ammunition that Garcia requested. I remember learning about Garcia, the culture of his training and the method of his tactics. I remember him referring to incarcerated people as enemy combatants and dogs. So I guess it's no surprise that he requested offensive weapons such as rubber buckshots, a load designed for close and intermediate encounters with large game, such as bear, moose, elk, and deer. The 21 pellets spread into a large pattern to impart a painful stimuli over a large area. And mid-range rubber slugs, which at 550 feet per second, will accurately target problem wildlife for safe and effective aversive conditioning. This load has been used thousands of times against bears and other large animals against the U.S. and Canada. And they've seemed to made their way into the Allegheny County Jail. Y'all seem to make no distinction between wild animals and humans. And to me, it's utterly disgusting. Kel-Tec shotguns and rifles chambered in .223 and 12 gauges now are in the Allegheny County Jail. I wanted to present to the board .223s and 12 gauges so y'all can see exactly how they are and what they can do to a human body, but I was advised not to by people smarter than me. Instead, I was advised to point out the irony at how I cannot even bring these bullets into the building, yet the jail continues to threaten the health and well-being of our neighbors in the ACJ with these weapons on a daily basis, and in violation of a clear JOB motion to boot, because I also remember that the JOB decided in a 4-3-1 vote to cancel the contract and forbid work with Garcia. And when the presence of these weapons was previously pointed out, the response was something like, well, your motion said we can't bring them in, but since they're already here, we're not violating it. So again, I'm calling on the board very clearly and very precisely to remove all of the weapons and ammunition that Garcia requested from the Allegheny County Jail, but more importantly, to remember the humanity of the people you're charged with caring for. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Elizabeth Shongar.
Elizabeth Shongar, Schongar.
Thank you.
I've been thinking about the shooting at the Tree of Life and the loss our community suffered. I suggest we also consider the deaths in the jail and think about the loss of fathers, husbands, sons to our community. Consider the trauma that many people in jail are suffering and will bring with them when they leave the jail. Every person in jail is our neighbor. They need to know we're working together to bring the best result for them and for anyone they hurt. Community must include everyone. People in jail should not suffer without adequate health care. People with mental health issues must not be isolated from their families and cut off from contact with anyone else and left without proper mental health care. This board needs to review the health contract with the AHN and determine what changes are needed to provide adequate staffing and healthcare decision-making. This board, you folks, need to review all the policies and practices that county and AHN staff follow and revamp healthcare and mental health care at the jail. You have the mortality report, and the NCCHC standards to guide you. It's time for you to put in the work. The warden can't do this alone. Rich Fitzgerald cannot revamp health care at the jail unless you provide the recommendations. The jail is central to our community, like it or not. After all, we spend 1/3 of our county budget on it. And we need this board to mobilize to change the health and mental health outcomes at the jail.
Thank you very much. Brian Englert.
My name is Brian Englert, E-N-G-L-E-R-T. I'm president of the union at the jail. This Thursday, there's a county hiring event from 2 to 5:30. The first 100 individuals are going to get a swag bag for attending, and they will interview you, have you apply, test, and even give you a conditional offer of employment within 3 hours. The starting wage is $25.47 an hour, and this is all great. Unfortunately, it's not our county. It's Cuyahoga County Jail. We had a hiring event 2 weeks ago. We didn't even get maybe 24 people. Our starting wage is $22.82 an hour. So here we have a county just like ours, Cuyahoga County, that knows how to hire people, but we don't, still, after me talking about this for 2 years. I'd also like to address Ms. Brinkman. I've been emailing you consistently, nonstop since May, for a list of all the medical devices in the jail that we are finding made into weapons. You continue to ignore me, and just last week we found a pair of screws and crutches that were sharpened into shanks for an inmate that no longer needed them. Will you please provide this list to at least the captain so the officers can go through our housing units and remove any potential weapons? I mean, I'm not going to beg you, but it is kind of a dereliction of duty if you refuse to do something. And lastly, I want to talk about the subcontracting of our work. We won a major unfair labor case against the county for subcontracting our jobs to sergeants. I've expressed my concerns to Chief Beeson and other majors how the schedule is being deliberately manipulated from the overnight shift into the morning shift to create vacancies to allow sergeants to get easy overtime. If you want sergeants to do our job still, then they should be able to do all jobs, housing units, hallways, et cetera, not just cherry pick the jobs that are ours and were always ours. And when you give our jobs to captains, let me be clear. When management does the job of a union person, they're rats. They're rats, and you have enough rats in that building running around the kitchen and the lounge. We don't need any more. Quit giving our work to captains. They're rats, and we're not going to take it anymore. That's it.
Thank you. That was the last public comment. With that, hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion's been made and properly seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes from the July 6, 2023 meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Point of order, Judge Housey,
Yes,
can we approve the minutes without a quorum?
Well, we have a quorum. So they've been approved.
Can you count that quorum for me? I don't see it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people.
You're counting 2 non-members in your quorum.
I know you pointed that out earlier. Thank you. So can we take a brief recess before we start with the warden's report? Maybe like 2 minutes, please. Thank you. We can still make it happen. All right, thank you very much. Sorry for the inconvenience. We'll now hear from the warden, Warden Harper.
Good evening, Board. Visits. The jail continues hosting contact visits for juveniles, incarcerated workers, veterans, and program participants designated Saturdays each month. For the month of July, a total of 49 incarcerated individuals received visits from a total of 97 family members, chaplaincy, and pre-release. The Foundation of Hope pre-release program held a graduation ceremony today as 10 males and 23 female participants graduated from the program. There are currently approximately 60 males and 44 females participating in the pre-release program. A new term of classes for both male and female individuals will begin next week. The Discharge and Release Center. The Discharge and Release Center assessed 288 individuals and distributed 52 boxes of Narcan in the month of July. The jail also worked with the health department to obtain fentanyl and xylazine test strips. These test strips are now being distributed through the DRC to individuals as they are released from custody. The goal of this program is harm reduction as it pertains to overdose prevention. A total of 75 test strip packages were distributed. The DRC continues to make referrals to community partners for services and assistance and to provide resources to assist individuals upon their release. Employee of the Month. Finally, we would like to announce that social worker Tyra Burke has been named ACJ Employee of the Month. I will now pass it over to Chief Deputy Warden Beeson.
Everybody here? How's that? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Board. So the ACJ held an in-person job fair on July 13th and 15th at the facility. A total of 47 individuals attended the fair during those 2 days. Attendees had an opportunity to meet with hiring managers, human resource staff, and learn about available positions, wages, benefits, and the hiring process itself. Attendees could also fill out applications on site. Our current cadet class began on Tuesday, June 20th, with 9 cadets, and they are scheduled to graduate in 2 weeks on August 18th. PA DOC transfers, we currently have 14 males, 1 female with 300 Bs in the facility, 12 males with detainers, and 12 males with open cases. The longest wait time on a 300B was received June 28th, and the shortest wait time is from yesterday, August 2nd. Federal inmates, we currently have 36, 15 are United States Marshal holds, and 21 are federal transfers for Allegheny County Court. And our use of force numbers for July was 43. I'll pass it on to Deputy Warden Clark.
Good evening, Board. The Residential Placement Services Department transferred 49 individuals to alternative housing in July and released 26 individuals to substance use treatment through the diversion program. The diversion program received 39 new referrals and served a total of 99 participants in July. The Medical Assistance Program assisted a total of 108 individuals with completing medical assistance applications upon release from the jail. Reentry services, harm reduction education groups began on July 11th and are ongoing. These groups focus on coping skills, recovery and relapse, community treatment resources, harm reduction, and overdose prevention. Programming with Amachi begins tomorrow, August 4th. Amachi will be providing parenting programming targeted to supporting incarcerated parents and their families in the community. Renovation, repair, and painting class will take place in the jail on August 7th and 8th. This class will conclude with the state certification testing. Those who are certified will be more marketable to construction, remodeling, and painting companies. This is a valuable training, particularly in Allegheny County, where we have a number of older homes in need of renovation. Educational services. Summer educational services for the juvenile population ended on July 14th. At the conclusion of summer educational programming, Serve Safe training was offered to the juveniles. 13 juveniles participated in the Serve Safe certification class and passed the test to become Serve Safe certified. Additional Serve Safe training classes will be offered to the juvenile population in the upcoming academic year, which begins on August 24th. The jail hosted several guest speakers during the month of July. We are grateful for the time, dedication, and services that these program representatives, as well as our community partners, contribute to the jail on a daily basis to support our population. On July 18th, Leon Ford from the HERE Foundation visited the jail as a guest speaker. The HERE Foundation's mission is gun violence reduction, trauma education, and workforce development. Mr. Ford shared his story of adversity and success. His infectious optimism and tenacity were inspirational. He engaged participants who asked great follow-up questions, which led to more in-depth discussion. On July 26th, the jail hosted a joint presentation by Allegheny County Veterans Services and Pittsburgh Hires Veterans Organization. A total of 23 veterans attended the event. Pittsburgh Hires Veterans aims to equip incarcerated veterans with essential job search skills, resume building techniques, interview preparation, second chance employers, and other resources to enhance their employment chances upon release. The goal is to have the veteran become an employed, engaged member of society. The veterans who participated in the presentation were given an assignment to prepare a draft resume. Those resumes will be collected and reviewed, and feedback will be provided. Allegheny County Veterans Services also provided information on various housing programs for veterans in the region. A Veteran Services officer comes into the jail once a week to meet with and provide supportive services to the veteran population. The jail will continue to partner with these programs to provide services for incarcerated veterans. On July 31st, Chuck Ondo from Revival Today Veterans Brigade spoke with the veterans and reentry population about resources to support their physical and emotional well-being and how to become empowered to lead more fulfilling lives. Mr. Ondo will continue to speak with individuals in the jail on a weekly basis. On August 1st, the Peace Education Program began. These groups help individuals focus on exploring personal peace and discovering resources and tools within themselves, such as inner strength, choice, appreciation, and hope. The Peace Education Program will be held twice weekly in the jail's reentry center. Finally, commissary web ordering, which allows for family members to purchase commissary items for incarcerated individuals, began on July 24th. That concludes this month's report for programs. Dr. Brinkman will provide the health care services update.
Good evening. For medication-assisted treatment and the expansion of the efforts, our continuation of medication-assisted treatment includes the following from July: that there were 26 individuals prescribed oral naltrexone, 2 receiving their Vivitrol injection prior to community release. 120 individuals were treated with Suboxone, and 27 were treated with Sublocade. Of those, 11 patients transitioned from Suboxone to Sublocade to support their recovery. Methadone continuation services have treated 46 individuals with 25 current patients. For Torrance commitments and admissions in July, 6 patients were admitted and transferred to Torrance State Hospital. 13 were committed to Torrance State Hospital. 2 patients had their commitments to Torrance State Hospital for competency restoration rescinded due to their clinical stabilization. Currently, we have 26 awaiting admission to Torrance State Hospital, with the longest waiting since March 31st. For our Tier 4 and 5 mental health data for the month of July, no individuals were identified as a Tier 5 in the mental health tier system, and 23 unique individuals were identified for Tier 4. From our healthcare waiting times in the waiting queues, we have sick call requests for medical, having a total of 9 patients waiting, with the longest waiting 3 days. Our sick call for mental health patients have a total of 21 patients waiting, with the longest waiting 4 days. Our psychiatrist appointment wait is for 133 patients, with the longest waiting 18 days. Oh, I misspoke on that one. I duplicated last month's numbers. The longest was waiting 23 days. And then mental health specialists, I have inaccurate information because I duplicated from psychiatry, so I apologize. It was well under 20 when I last looked earlier this week. And then as Chief had spoke about our successful job fair that ACJ had in July, healthcare was able to engage 10 new candidates and have been pursuing eligible candidates for a variety of positions.
Your Honor, we're ready for any questions that you may have for the management team.
I did have one question regarding the commissary and creating the ability for family members to purchase things on commissary for incarcerated individuals. I know it's just been a month, but have you seen any impact, or is there, like, anecdotally, is there an increase in items that are being purchased? Can you say, or is it pretty? I thought
Right.
it was a month.
It began July 24th, so we don't have any
My
outcomes
apologies.
from that
So you don't
yet.
have anything? No way to even gauge it yet? No, just anecdotally?
No, not yet.
All right, thank you. I apologize. I thought you said it's been a month. I'm sorry. Ms. Hallam?
Thank you, Judge Halsey. Okay, so I do have a couple questions. My first question is, Warden Harper, you spoke about the contact visits that folks were getting. My first question is, if you can speak to specifically how many children got contact visits? If anybody can.
I don't have the specific number of contact visits for children versus adults with me. I mean, we'd have to get that for you, sorry.
Okay, and then I think that he said that there were 4 different groups of folks, 4 different categories who got the contact visits. It's on Saturdays, right?
Correct.
How is every Saturday for all of those groups who get contact visits, or do you break them down?
No, it's different each week. So one week is one population, the next Saturday will be a different population. So it may be workers are generally our first Saturday, and then the next one is reentry program and so on. So it varies.
So can you speak to how many of those Saturdays were for the children? Would it have just been one then? Is it one each month?
Children can come in and visit their loved ones.
The children incarcerated at the jail?
Oh, I'm sorry. They have one Saturday a month, yes.
Okay. And then, is there any other way for folks who are not in those 4 categories to get contact visits? Like, can you earn them in some way? Or, because I think you said it was workers.
A reentry population, veterans, people that participate in programming, so that's how you can earn that.
So if there's no way that anybody who's not in one of those categories can get contact visits?
Right.
Okay. My next question is, I read an article this week from the Pittsburgh Institute of Nonprofit Journalism, I think in coordination with the Pittsburgh Independent, about the Seesaw contract. And I was under the impression that when we passed that motion here, that training stopped. But even myself, a couple weeks ago when I was on a visit in the jail, saw folks carrying the shotguns. So I'm wondering if someone could speak to the Seesaw training that Joseph Garcia and his organization were contracted to provide. Was that training completed?
Seesaw training was terminated a couple of years ago, but we still have correctional officers, members of our correctional response team, responding to situations with our special delivery systems.
So it was terminated without being completed?
It was terminated.
Okay, and then are any of the weapons that were purchased to the weapons, projectiles, munitions, whatever you want to call them, are any of those still in the jail?
We still have those ammunitions and special delivery systems in our jail, but we are compliant to the motion by not bringing in those delivery systems and ammunitions from the day the motion was passed.
But you do still have the shotguns and the munitions in the jail, and you are using them, you're just not bringing new ones in, is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Next question I have was about the online commissary ordering. Can you just tell me about it? I mean, it's the first I've heard about it. I think I understand that it's the whole commissary menu, or are we talking about the packages? What are we talking about here with online commissary?
So with the online commissary, like you brought up a couple weeks ago, you actually inquired about it.
Yeah.
We worked with the vendor to identify items that would be available to the entire population. So because there is limited abilities to have restrictions, so some pods, due to dietary restrictions, can't have high sodium products. So those are not on the menu to ensure that we are providing a healthy options and that the entire population can benefit from this. So we did not go with the packs as has been with previous vendors because this allows for families to customize what they want to send. So their individual may not have wanted this item, but the pack had it. So this one allows for them to customize what they are sending. And it is not the entire menu, it is curated items.
How many items?
I can't speak to this right now. The menu is publicly available on the website.
Cool.
And based on, sales, as well as based on interest and feedback we get, those menu may be adjusted in the future.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question is about the medicated assisted treatment. It's nice, I mean, since I've been on this board, those numbers have definitely gone up of the folks who are receiving that treatment, but I do have a couple questions about it. You said that there were a lot of folks who were transitioned from Suboxone to Sublocade. Can you speak, you said it was to support their recovery, but can you speak as to who made the decision to transition those patients from Suboxone to Sublocade?
It's usually a treatment team decision, including the patient.
Okay, and what is the rationale behind that?
It could be patient preference because they want to move toward that. It could be to support them if they were to leave our facility and go somewhere that doesn't offer Suboxone. That way they can at least have the Sublocade for a period of time. Or if there were issues with their treatment plan not working with Suboxone, they will consider Sublocade.
Okay, and how many of these, you listed the 5 different medications that are being provided, and how many people are on each. How many of those people had those prescriptions when they came into the jail? Were they all existing prescriptions?
Not exactly. So somebody who transitions to Sublocade, if they were on Suboxone but they're choosing Sublocade once they get to us, they can do that, or they could transition while they're with us. And Vivitrol, naltrexone, we can induct internally. For methadone, there are some pregnant populations where we would be inducting, but otherwise they're coming to us on existing treatment plans.
Okay, and then why is the jail able to initiate naltrexone and Vivitrol but not the others?
It was there's a long process as to how we got to the point that we're at today. So naltrexone, we were able to navigate all of the policies, procedures, access, and things like that a lot easier than we've been able to navigate for buprenorphine products. So I know that you are interested in where that is. I haven't had all of those logistics finalized at this time, but we're hoping, and that's why I haven't reported in detail what that will look like. We're hoping early '24, but like I said, all the logistics are not finalized for me to be able to say this is when we're starting.
Okay, can it please be soon?
I am trying as soon as we can. There are things related to our manufacturer caps and having the staffing to support the volume of patients we anticipate.
Okay, yeah, because I know I had spoken with a couple of the methadone distribution facilities. I'm sorry, I don't know what you really call those places, but they were like super gung-ho about it. So is it really just like staffing issues? Like, do we need to be able to hire people to support the program rollout? Is that what I should focus on?
It's not the only issue because it does have to do with having access to the volume of medications that we expect to have. So we have to work with our manufacturer for that. But methadone specifically is 100% contracted out, so that's a different conversation.
Okay, that's why that one is the one that it seems to have like the lowest numbers, is because you need to do that from another facility.
You also see a lower population on methadone treatment. That's why, don't quote me on the number, but there's only approximately 10 providers in the county, and there's far more providers of the other methods.
Okay. Thank you very much. Warden Harbor, I actually, my brain is reeling a little bit about this, these weapons in the jail. Can you speak to exactly, I know whenever the seesaw training first came and the weapons first came, the shotguns and the munitions, we had gotten like a breakdown of what was coming in to there, the types of guns, the types of munitions. Can you speak to which of those are actively being used inside the jail right now?
I can't give you the exact type of weapons that Seesaw has. That's something that we could probably present at a later date. And I'm not sure that I would want to do that in a public forum either. So that's something that I can present to the board in a setting that's not public.
I don't need to see them. I've seen them. What I'm asking specifically is like questions about the quantity, how many you have, which of them. I know that they were Kel-Tec. Actually, one of the public commenters spoke about it today. I know that they were Kel-Tec weapons. I want to know who, maybe you can speak to that, uses them in the jail. Can you just give me positions of people who do that?
I will be more than willing to provide you that information, but not in this setting. I don't want to give the number of weapons that we have in a public setting. I don't want to give all the information that you're requesting in a public setting.
Yeah, you have said that to me about a lot of things, and you've never given me any of the information in a non-public setting either.
Send me an email of everything that you want, and I can give you information immediately. So send me an email of everything, and I asked you that before. If you want some, email the team, and we'll give it to you.
Everybody who's sitting up here, is there specific people for specific questions? Can I direct them all to you?
If it's for weapons and operations, it's me and Chief Beeson. If it's healthcare, it's Dr. Brinkman. If it's tablets and commissary, it's Deputy Tuma. If it's programming, it's Deputy Clark.
But if I send them all to you, you can make sure that the proper people get them to answer?
Absolutely.
Okay,
But
so one
also,
list.
my thing is this. I'm not going to send the email back to you where you can meet and discuss it in a private setting if it's something that I think would jeopardize the safety and security of the ACJ.
But you just said that you would email me immediately with the answers.
I'm not going to email you things that's going to jeopardize the safety and security of the ACJ. Things that will not jeopardize the safety and security, I will get it to you immediately. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear about that.
So is there a reason why, are there certain things that you won't present here, though? I'm trying to think how to phrase this question. Like, you have alleged that everything that I've asked for is a safety and security concern. So what things will you email me? Like, what things would you be leaving out of these meetings except for that excuse?
So you just asked me about how many weapons that we have. I'm not going to say that in this setting.
But you will email me that.
But I will meet with you. I feel that will jeopardize safety and security, so we can meet to discuss that. Issues that I feel that will not jeopardize the safety and security, I will email that to you immediately.
Okay, and would you also discuss those things in this setting? The things that you do not believe jeopardize safety and security?
If it doesn't jeopardize safety and security, I would definitely talk about it in this meeting.
Right, so that's my point. So there is not a single thing that I've asked for that you will email me then?
Ms. Hallam, email me what you would like.
I'll email you anyways, just to try it.
Thank you.
But can you at least say yes or no? Have any of those weapons been used in the jail?
Yes, they have.
Okay. On people who are incarcerated in the jail?
I don't remember ever a weapon being used on an individual, but I don't remember anything on an individual, but other methods have been used.
On multiple individuals, is that what you're saying? I'm just trying to understand what not on an individual means, if you could please clarify.
So let me give you an example. There's an issue on the pod, multiple 50-some inmates refusing to go in, crew members respond to the unit, give the orders to step in, the individuals don't step in, they use a Nova round, shoot it on the floor, loud bursts, they hit the ground, they go to their cells. So that has been done, yes.
Multiple times?
That has been done. I don't know how many times, Ms. Howland.
Whew, okay. All right, I'm going to move on to my next question. One of the NCCHC mortality review findings was that the amount of time an individual is kept in intake exceeds most jail practices and places inmates at risk for not being treated or identified as requiring additional care. Is there any sort of record keeping that the jail has that actually quantifies how long an individual is staying in intake? I know we get the numbers about how long they're waiting for medical treatment and mental health treatment, but is there any sort of record keeping for how long someone's in intake?
I don't recall of any documents to record that, no.
The only operation system we have that tracks that is once they're booked in back in the processing department. That starts the tracking in the OMS system. Prior to that, there's no official tracking to say how long they were there.
So how does the NCCHC know that they're being kept in there for a really long time that's too long according to their standard?
I'd have to ask the NCCHC where they got that information.
They got it from the jail. They came into
What
the
I'm
jail.
saying is I don't know where they gleaned that information from specific.
So can you explain, when does processing start? Like what'd you call it, OSM?
OMSE.
OMSE. When that kicks in, you said once they go through processing, that's when the OMSE system picks them up?
Yes.
What stage is that? Is that when they get called and get cleared by medical and then go upstairs?
So they go to the processing department after they're seen in the arraignment department by the MDJ. So if they're given a bond that they can't satisfy, or if they're not given an ROR or a non-monetary bond and released at that point, then they're sent to processing to be entered into the system. That's where they see the medical, the healthcare department. We change their property out and then send them upstairs.
Okay, so it's like the last thing that happens in intake before they go upstairs?
Correct.
But when someone comes into the jail, literally comes through the Sally Port, there's nothing that says Joe Smith came into the Sally Port at 7:20 on Tuesday?
There's an ASAP system that we complete at the front side. That's where we take the committing agency's information and then we start, tracking who committed the individual. We track when they went to ID, when they went to pre-arraignment, things like that.
All the steps?
Right.
Okay, and that's called the ASAP system, you said? Okay, so do those two systems talk?
No.
No, okay. All right, my next question is about, sorry, hold on, I'm trying to find it here. Okay. So who can speak to the mortality reviews that are conducted? I don't know whose department.
The only thing I can say is the county manager's office is working with the NCCHC to do annual mortality reviews. So that's in the county manager's office hands.
Okay, has there ever been a mortality review done?
We just had one done for historical mortality reviews in the fall, which the board had.
Wait, I'm sorry. You're saying that I'm not understanding what you're saying for historical mortality. You're saying you went backwards all the deaths that happened prior to the fall?
Yes, in the fall, we had done a historical look back with NCCHC of 5 years worth.
And you're saying you gave that to us?
Yes, and the public. It's posted online in a redacted version.
That's the NCCHC's review?
Yes.
Correct, but the NCCHC said that the jail and the law says that the jail is supposed to do both a mortality review and a Death in Custody Act report for every individual that dies in the jail.
I'm not sure what law you're saying we have to do that from.
I mean, I have it here somewhere. Allegheny Jail does not do mortality reviews or psychological autopsies, and they are minimal if done at all. They're not providing the information intended by the standard.
I understand that, but you cited that we're breaking the law by not doing this.
Sorry, the standard. I misspoke.
Okay. So that would be the standard when you are compliant and completely accredited by them, correct? We have not done that completely.
Accredited by whom?
NCCHC.
So there is an NCCHC accreditation process?
Yes, we've discussed it here before.
What is the accreditation process that we have discussed that the jail has is not the NCCHC?
Correct, but we've also discussed the NCCHC one.
Okay, so you're saying you don't do mortality reviews because you're not going for the NCCHC's accreditation? I'm just not
No,
following
you're
you.
putting words in my mouth. I just said that it would be a violation of the standard if were accredited by them. We do aim for that, but we haven't been able to yet accomplish that accreditation. So that is a part of why it's one of the things that we're working on now, as the warden discussed previously.
So prior to the NCCHC's mortality review that was done this fall, which, yes, I'm very aware I have that, I've seen that, very redacted, but I have seen it. Other than that, there has never been a mortality review on a death in the jail?
We hadn't done them in a formal way in order to demonstrate that to NCCHC, so they weren't able to see anything formalized.
What about psychological autopsies? Have you ever done those?
Yes.
For deaths in the jail?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you determine who to do one of those on?
When the medical examiner's office has determined that it is by manner of suicide.
Okay, and are you starting to do mortality reviews now, or was the NCCHC one the only one that you have done?
As I just stated, Ms. Howland, the county manager's office is in the process right now of doing the mortality review for this year. So they're in the process of doing that.
I'm just very confused why the county manager's office that is not located inside the jail, that they do not work in the jail, is conducting mortality reviews for the jail.
I did not say that the county manager's office is conducting the mortality review. I said that they're having conversations with NCCHC to come back to do the mortality reviews for this year.
So the plan is to have the NCCHC do every mortality review, not for the jail to do any on their own?
Ms. Hallam, it is not uncommon to outsource service like that where it requires subject matter expert. It also removes that from the individuals who participated in the care. So having an outside body do those mortality death reviews offers up objectiveness from the outside. So it is not uncommon for agencies to outsource that type of review.
Yeah, I'm not alleging that it's uncommon. This is the first I've ever heard that the jail was not doing the mortality reviews.
By contracting, the jail or the county manager's office would be contracting it. So if your confusion is that it's not jail employees to do it, again, even if we were to do the mortality death review at the jail, it would actually have to be outsourced to AHN, who are the providers, who are the subject matter experts to be able to do that.
And why did you choose NCCHC to do them instead of AHN?
We did not, as the warden has stated, that the county manager's office has engaged with them because they are the ones who did the original NCCHC mortality review that was conducted, and they're looking at them and seeking guidance to further that mortality review.
And I believe there's actually someone from the county manager's office here. Mr. Pilarski, could you speak to that process?
I can speak to the fact that we are in conversations with NCCHC that possibly enter into an agreement to conduct those reviews, but nothing's been finalized yet.
Okay, is that something that was put out for a bid? Like, was there an RFP put out for those services?
No, this would be under professional services. That's a required bid.
Okay. So, and then I guess I can assume then that there was not a mortality review conducted for Douglas Bonomo?
We would still be within the time period to conduct that, so we're in process of all of our investigations.
So what is the time period to conduct those?
I don't have it handy in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak.
But have all of the mortality reviews been done within that time period?
As we've talked about, this has been a process we've been developing complete implementation. So we haven't been able to fully, completely implement the standard yet.
And how many, it's not a new requirement though.
Correct.
Okay, so why has...
As I already mentioned, it is a requirement and it's not a violation when you're not accredited. So we've been trying to get to a place where we can be completely compliant for accreditation. We've not been able to do that in past years because of a numerous amount of reasons. So we've not been able to be 100% compliant, and we've been honest about that and upfront.
I would dispute that, but what about a psychological autopsy? Has that been done for Douglas Bonomo?
If it's determined to be a suicide, it will be.
Is it currently suspected that it is a suicide?
I would not know that.
Okay. I know that Mr. Bonomo died in the mental health pod. It says around 7 a.m., and this is from the county's own press release. Around 7 a.m. Sunday, correctional officers discovered an unresponsive man in his cell and notified a nurse. Is there any record of when Mr. Bonomo was checked on prior to him being discovered unresponsive at 7 a.m.?
Ms. Holland, we're not going to get into that in this forum, ma'am. Now, if you would like to meet later on, we can answer all those questions, but we cannot get into that in this forum.
Why?
Pending litigation, ma'am.
Are you being sued as a result of Mr. Bonomo's death?
Ms. Holland, we will not get into that in this forum.
But you just alleged that there was pending litigation. There is not. I know that for a fact.
Ms. Hallam, we will not get into the details of that death in this forum.
Okay, prior to Mr. Bonomo's death, what mental health tier, you know how you have the tiers of the mental health and he was on the mental health pod, what mental health tier was he on?
It's HIPAA-protected information. We're not going to discuss Mr. Bonomo.
Okay. Can you all speak to what is the purpose of a mortality review, please?
It's a continuous quality improvement tool to be able to see what kinds of precipitating factors may have gone into the tragic event and what kinds of things we might be able to glean from it for improvement.
Okay. And did you glean anything from the last one that was conducted?
From which one are you talking about?
Well, you told me there was only one, so I'm talking about that one in the fall.
Are you talking? Yes, and we've been talking about how we're working on implementing process improvements.
So you agree with the findings of the NCCHC? That's what you have gleaned, is what their findings were?
We agree that we need to make improvements in general so that we could eventually be able to be compliant with all of their standards.
Okay, and what documents and materials are reviewed for a mortality review?
It would be different for each patient, so it's not going to look the same.
Are there certain documents that are reviewed for every person who dies in the jail?
A clinical mortality review is only to be done by a non-treating physician, so I would not be the one who's doing that.
But you're not aware of the process by which it happens either?
I'm not saying that, but I'm not sure what kind of information would help answer your question right now.
I'm trying to understand the process. I want to understand how things are happening in the jail, and that's something that I haven't really been able to get from anyone in these meetings. How is a mortality review conducted when it is conducted?
Ms. Hallam, we would be more than willing to meet with you at a later date to bring you that information, but for you to hit us with this information right now and expect us to answer it, we cannot do that.
Sir,
So all I'm saying is, we would be willing to meet with you to answer that question. Just email us the information that you want, and we can meet to discuss that.
Okay, these are just really simple, like corrections, general questions. The fact that no one up here can answer them is really scary to me, but that is probably why our death rate is so high.
Well, actually, Ms. Hallam, our mortality death review, as Dr. Brinkman mentioned, is carried out by physicians. So for the warden or myself to be able to speak to it, we are not subject matter experts. I believe NCCHC did have an executive session where they were made available to the entire jail oversight board, which at that moment in time, you could have asked them what they entailed in their mortality death review.
I never.
So if I could.
You had an executive session with the NCCHC?
When the report was handed out and made available and posted live to the website, an executive session was made available to NCCHC. They attended and they answered questions by the jail oversight board. And that was coordinated through the county manager's office.
And you're saying I was there?
Judge Allen, Chair Cross was there, Terry Klein Collier, Corey Conner was there.
I didn't know about this.
There was an email somewhere that was sent.
Whatever, I'll deal with that later. Okay, that is also another reason why we have asked for the medical director from the jail to come here, is because I would like to speak to a medical professional for once, especially about the deaths in the jail. So is that something that's maybe in the works to happen?
I believe Dr. Brinkman has spoken to that as the response to which AHN has provided.
Okay, What about a psychological autopsy? Is that something you can speak to what that looks like?
What kinds of questions do you have about a psychological autopsy?
What is a psychological autopsy? What is its purpose? What documents and materials are reviewed? Who is involved or participates in the review? Do you meet in person or communicate by email? Is there any documentation of these autopsies? Have there been any changes to policies, practices, or procedures based on the findings of the autopsies?
If you want comprehensive answers to those, I need more than 30 seconds to be able to answer it.
I literally ask you the same questions every single meeting.
You
and
have
say
never
that
asked me about psychological
every single
autopsy.
meeting.
Sorry, but that's not come up. Please review.
Have I not asked about mortality reviews either?
Not in this capacity.
Oh my God. Okay. Next question is, well, that's just asking for the things I just asked for. So another thing I've been hearing a lot when it comes to people who are dying in the jail is about this 6A process. And I don't know if anybody can speak to that or explain to me what that is.
A 6A generally is just a sentence modification document that comes down from the courts. But I don't know how it would relate to your question, no.
Because people who are being hospitalized prior to their death are getting released from the custody of the jail. And that has led to the jail thinking that they don't have to report some of the deaths that have happened for people who are incarcerated at the jail. So I'm trying to understand how that release from custody happens. It's been explained to me over the years as a way that the reason for the release from custody when someone is about to die in the jail, in the hospital, is so that their family members can be near them as they die. And I'm just trying to understand, I guess, what that process looks like for a 6A release.
When we're advised by the attending physicians at the hospital, wherever the individual may be, that the individual is near end of life, then our healthcare department then petitions the court to start this 6A release process.
Okay, so that was my question. So it's the healthcare department at the jail who gets word from the hospital and then petitions the court?
Correct.
Okay. Is it a specific person from the healthcare department, or is it just like they're just relaying a message from the hospital?
I believe we're just passing information on.
Okay. And has there been instances where someone received a 6A release and then was reincarcerated because they recovered?
I don't have that information. If I couldn't say yes or no right now.
A 6A is a court order from a judge directing a person to be released from jail. 6A can be given because a person has reached their minimum for their sentence. It can be given because a person has, their detainer's been lifted. It's nothing more than a court order directing the jail to release a person. It can be because of a medical concern. It could be because their sentence has been served, but it's a court order. It's not just because a person has been hospitalized or is having a chronic illness. It is a court order from a judge directing the jail to release a person from custody. That's what a 6A is.
Thank you for that explanation, Judge Halsey. And so who from the Allegheny County Jail keeps track of the 6A releases that are made for medical reasons?
All that information would come to our records department. That information would then be placed in the individual's folder.
Okay, is there ever an instance where the ask to the court originates in the jail's healthcare department as opposed to from a hospital? Like you said, the hospital calls the healthcare department reaches out to the courts. Is there ever an instance where the jail healthcare department just does it without the hospital saying so?
I'd have to defer to Dr. Brinkman for that. I don't recall any, but.
I can't recall anything like that. Usually we're alerting the courts that there is a critical condition for them to make whatever decision they feel is necessary.
But that's never made prior to the hospital telling you to do that?
It's when the attending physician determines that they are in critical condition. So I can't recall it ever happening outside of the hospital.
Okay, can you recall it ever happening where then the person recovered?
I wouldn't know because they were really, if the 6A was ordered, then they were released. So I wouldn't know what their health status is.
But they would come right back to jail if they were in jail when they went to the hospital.
Not necessarily.
If we had a 6A release and then that individual recovered, they're released from custody. They're not
Oh, really? So they're not rearrested just because they recovered?
Correct. If that's ever
I
happened.
don't think that's true. It has happened, and I don't think that's true what you're saying.
Absolutely.
People are, so you're saying I am in jail awaiting trial for murder. I go to the hospital thinks I'm going to die. They tell the court, they 6A, release me. You're saying I'm just free now? I know that's not true.
Well, you know what? You would know. How would I know?
Go ahead, please speak. I would love to hear.
A 6A is a court order directing the jail to release a person. It can be done for a variety of reasons. If a person is given a 6A, a judge has determined that that person should no longer be detained in the Allegheny County Jail for whatever reason. Just because the person gets better or just because if the person's arrested on new charges, they may be returned to the jail. If the person violates a term or condition of probation, they may be returned to the jail. But just because there's an improvement in circumstances does not result in a person being sent back to jail. That's not correct.
Okay, all right. Do you have any record if any of these medically necessary releases have been requested this year?
Can you clarify? What are you asking?
Have there been any instances where the jail reached out to the courts for a person who was in critical condition in a hospital to be released from custody?
I don't specifically track that.
But it happens all the time. I mean, I get requests to release people, not even because they're in the hospital. It may be a person who has health issues and had tested positive for COVID, or it may be a person who's a high-risk incarcerated individual, and there's a concern about that person getting COVID. And so the question becomes, is it better for that person to be in jail, or is it better for that person to be on house arrest, or is it better for that person to be released and to deal with their case from their home? It happens all the time, but I think you are convinced that it's only done when someone's near death.
No, Judge Halsey, can I correct you? I'm sorry. I'm asking specifically about the people who are released. I know, but I wasn't.
Let me finish. So what I think the misunderstanding is that you appear to be under the belief that there's a 6A being done to circumvent the process of getting a person out of jail so that they can die and no one has to report that information. And what I'm telling you is 6As are done for a variety of reasons, but in a health situation, it could be done where there's no concern about a person being near death. It could just be that the person has asthma and has hypertension and has a history of blood clots, so you release the person because based on the nature of the offenses, it's not necessary for them to be in jail, so you lift a detainer, you enter a 6A, they're released from jail. So it's not always because someone's about to die.
I'm very aware of that. I am, in case you can't tell, specifically asking about the people that the jail is requesting to be released because they are critically ill. That's what we were talking about.
Sure, but the jail is not always requesting that they be released because they're critically ill. Sometimes it's the probation department that is calling and saying, hey, I have a person who's in jail. They have a high-risk illness. They're a high-risk incarcerated individual, and we think that they'd be better suited to go to this alternative housing facility or this drug treatment facility. So sometimes it has, most of the times, it has nothing to do with the health condition.
I am very aware of that, but I am not questioning probation right now. I am questioning the jail. So very obviously, I don't think they had any question if I was asking about other departments that ask for the 6A. I'm specifically asking about the jail. Okay?
Based on your question, I don't know that you fully understand what a 6A is. I think that's the problem.
I understand what it is.
Okay.
And I'm trying to understand when the jail is using it. And yes, I am alleging that the jail has done those things to not have to report deaths because people whose names are on those signs out there who have died in the jail have been released from custody and have not been reported as deaths from the Allegheny County Jail in accordance with the Deaths in Custody Reporting Act. So yes, I know for a fact that that has happened. And I'm just trying to gather some information about it. If you would please let me proceed with my questions.
And just so you're clear, the Death and Reporting Act does not require anyone not in the custody of the Allegheny County Jail.
You are in luck because I happen to have the language right here.
Okay.
If an incarcerated person dies in the hospital after transfer from a jail, That's the subject line. This is directly from bja.ojp.gov, Death in Custody Reporting Act, reporting guidance and frequently asked questions. If an incarcerated individual is transferred to a medical facility and dies there, not in the correctional facility, is that reportable? Yes. If the incarcerated person, absent the medical condition, would have been in prison at the time of death, it counts as a reportable death. Although the person was not physically in a correctional facility at the time of death, the death is still one of an incarcerated individual. Have you read this?
Which furthers my point. I don't believe you understand what a 6A is, because what that is saying is if a person is in the custody of the Allegheny County Jail and they are still detained and they are sent to the hospital and they die, that is a reportable death. I agree 100%. However, if a person is, a 6A is entered and a person is released from the custody and care of the Allegheny County Jail and they die later at home, at the hospital, on their way to church, that is not a reportable.
That is not true. I think I should repeat this. If the incarcerated person, absent the medical condition, so a person gets a 6A because of their medical condition, because in this situation that I'm discussing, they are critically ill, the hospital calls the jail relays that to the court. That is what we just heard, correct?
That's not what that says.
That is literally what this says. If the incarcerated person, absent the medical condition, would have been in prison, it is a reportable death. That person would have been in jail and not released.
Incarcerated, in custody of the jail, sent to the hospital, absolutely. They're in custody of the jail and it should be reported. If there is a 6A entered directing the jail to release that person, they are no longer in the custody of the jail. Even if they go to the hospital, once a 6A is entered, it is a court order directing the jail to release that person. Once a 6A is entered, they are no longer in the custody of the jail.
I'm aware, but this does not say if at the time of their death they are in custody. This does not say that. This says if they would have been in jail, if they weren't taken to the hospital where they died, regardless of the 6A. The 6A happened after they got to the hospital.
It doesn't say that.
Yes, it literally says, absent the medical condition, they would have been in prison. A person who was released would have been in the jail absent the medical condition.
A person who's in jail, detained in jail, sent to the hospital because of a health condition, they're still in the custody of the jail. A person who's in jail and becomes ill and gets a 6A and is sent to the hospital is no longer in the custody of the jail.
No, these are 6As that are happening once the person is already in critical condition. We just heard from the administration that that's when the 6As happen.
I don't think you fully appreciate what
I'm
the
really
statute
worried
says.
that a sitting judge does not understand the Deaths in Custody Reporting Act.
I'm really worried that you are going to tell me how it works when I do it every day.
That's even worse.
You don't
Oh my gosh,
Ms.
man.
Hallam, you
Okay,
don't
I'm
know
gonna
what you're
move on.
talking about.
I'm gonna move on. Anyways, okay, so the next thing, we have talked a lot about emergency room runs. I have asked repeatedly, so has Controller O'Connor, for information about emergency room runs, information about, people going to the hospital. Also, in a 2021 meeting, Judge Clark actually ruled that the warden is required to notify the Jail Oversight Board when an incarcerated person is hospitalized. And warden, you actually agreed to do this. I've asked for that information over and over again. I was told it was HIPAA or safety or security or whatever one of the excuses at the time. It's really funny because a right to know request was filed and I got it all. I couldn't get it in this board, but the county law department determined that was not HIPAA protected, with names redacted, of course. This whole stack is just since January 2021, and there are 13 per page. I also have here the logs from the 911, again, something that you told me you could not give us to the board in this setting, but yet, via right to know request, the county law department disagreed with your opinion and turned it over. So I just want to ask a few questions about this, because this is a lot, and I don't know if anyone else up here has gotten notifications about any of these, as we are supposed to. Any other members of the board gotten notifications about hospital runs? Okay, and Warden Harper, do you recall the meeting where you agreed to notify us when an individual is hospitalized?
What I do recall, Ms. Hallam, is that Controller O'Connor has been out on leave, and the sheriff and I has requested a meeting with O'Connor to discuss exactly what is an emergency. So we have scheduled the meeting. We want to meet so we can find out exactly what the board considers an emergency, and we have not had that meeting yet. So when we have that meeting and we are advised as to what the board considers an emergency, we will report what the board wants to report.
We're talking about two different things. I did not once mention the word emergency outside of the context of the fact that these are emergency room runs. That is not what was agreed upon with Judge Clark and you and the rest of this board in 2020. It was when an incarcerated person is taken to the hospital. It was not anything about tell us about emergencies. It was specifically about going to the hospital.
Well, I don't remember that, so can you send me the email with that, with those in the minutes?
I can send you the meeting minutes from it. I was going to say, I can't do that. So I just want to ask a couple questions about this. So I have, it's actually really informative information. It says the location that the individual was picked up. These 911 records go back to January of 2020. These are the receipts. This is all the money that taxpayers have paid to get people treatment at the hospital because the jail was unable to provide it. It says the date that it happened. It says where that the individual was picked up from. What time the call was entered, what time the call was dispatched, what time EMTs arrived on scene, what time they cleared the call, and what it was for. These are some really serious things. I mean, a jumper, a seizure, heart attack, stroke, psych, fall, overdose, pregnancy, bleeding. There are lots of different assault, allergies, convulsion. A crash, entrapment. I don't even know how a crash entrapment happens inside the jail, but these are all things that were dispatched to 911 from the jail, and this board was not notified of a single one of these. Did your administration not think it was pertinent for the Jail Oversight Board to know about these very serious issues happening in the jail?
First of all, Ms. Hallam, there's no way that we can respond to all of the documentation that you have. Now, if you would like to meet to discuss those documentation, we'll be more than willing to meet.
We are meeting now and discussing now.
So we cannot discuss that because we don't have that information.
You do. It came from you. It was turned over from the jail.
So
These documents
what I would like
here?
to do, Ms. Hallam, is meet with you, and you could we can go over that information so we can give you a good answer to your questions. Right now, we are not able to give you a good answer to your questions pertaining to that.
Which question specifically?
Anything pertaining to the documentation that you have now.
I'm generally asking about ER runs and ambulances being dispatched to the jail. Are you not qualified to speak on that?
We're not capable of speaking about the documentation that you have there.
I was just showing these documents for reference to let you know that it was something that I requested that you told me no, and it was gotten through right to know request.
Okay.
That's the only reference to the documents that I'm going to make. The rest of this is questions generally about the emergency room runs, which, by the way, you detail in your warden's report. For example, in 2023, there have been 253 emergency room runs already. That's from your report. Can you speak to that?
Only thing that I could say is that there's been 253 emergency room runs. So apparently they were needed.
And can you describe the process by which an ambulance is called for a need at the jail?
After responding to either a complaint or an emergency, the medical team will assess and determine if it's something they're able to manage, monitor for a period, or if they feel that the patient needs to go to the hospital.
Okay, and can you please clarify who the medical team is that is making these decisions?
It would be interdisciplinary, including a provider, director, assistant director of nursing, or another manager on duty, possibly nurse. It's a variety of people who's there in that moment that responds to the patient issue.
And there is always a medical professional. I only ask because I know from a prior deputy warden who was not a medical professional who was fulfilling ADON duties. And so I'm just wondering if you can guarantee that there is an actual medical professional making those calls.
There are providers, as I mentioned, in that interdisciplinary team who are making those calls.
Okay, medical providers.
A nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, or a doctor of osteopathy or a medical doctor.
Okay, on every single call for an emergency room run, one of those positions is participating in that team?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And then, so again, I do want to be clear that the county lawyers already have determined that these invoices and receipts, that these calls in rationales were not protected by HIPAA, so it is cool for us to talk about this here. So the total transportation costs for these visits, just from January to May of this year, so in the first 5 months of this year, was $55,835.81. When the warden's report gives these numbers for the emergency room runs, where do those numbers come from? Is it from a hospital bill? Is it from a patient file? Is it some sort of tracking within the jail?
We track it from the emergency run itself. So they, anytime there's an emergency run like that, we have a series of checks and balances that we do, and that's how we manually track it. There's not an electronic system or something like that.
Where do you keep that record for these, to compile the report of the total number? Is it kept in a daily activity log? Is it its own separate log?
No, it's not a log. We manually track them. Like,
in what?
It happened today. We have it. Okay. There's not like any formalized process. That's why a lot of times when these data requests come in, we don't have formalized processes to track some of the things that are very specific that are being asked of.
Okay, but these literally say Allegheny County Jail 950 2nd Avenue on them. Like, these are your documents. I'm wondering if this is what you're using to track at the invoices from the
I don't know
bills.
what you're looking at.
This is an invoices and a tracking of all of the hospital runs, the dates, how much was billed for it. This is from the jail.
So one of your asks was how much does a hospital run cost? That is a singular item within the cost of a hospital run. So your question was very broad in scope. So to that broadness of the scope of your ask, we could not calculate because there's other variables in every hospital run expense. So that's where we could not answer that question. That contract is public as to how much each hospital run costs. That's a contracted service. So that is a public document that is available for review. So that exists, but your ask was how much does a hospital visit cost? Which
no, an ambulance run.
Yeah, an ambulance run, but to us, that meant not just the physical transportation. So that's where I believe the warden extended to a sit down so we can understand what that ask is. Because an ambulance run to us is not just the cost associated with an ambulance picking you up and going there, because there's also expenses of staff going with that individual. So a hospital run to us is more than that piece of paper in front of you.
But this piece of paper is specifically just ambulance transports.
Correct, but your ask was an ambulance run, and like I'm saying.
But you had this and didn't give it to me.
But to us, that your ask was an ambulance run, meaning all the components that go.
I didn't ask for all the components. I asked how much an ambulance run costs. And these documents told me.
That is a difference of terminology that is used, and I'm more than happy to sit down with you outside of this, after this, whenever, to discuss with you. When you use the terminology as ambulance run, to you it means one thing, but to us it means something different. So in that regard, I'm happy to have that conversation.
I don't need to have that conversation now. I have it. I mean, I just had to ask month after month and then file a right to know request. I got it. I don't know what you're talking about having it now. You won't answer my questions. But yeah, I have the total now. I know how much it costs. So you guys all know now, from January to May, $55,835. So I would like these going forward. When these happen, I want this specific document so that it is all very clear what I want. I want to know how much it costs, how many of them happen. Do you have any questions? Because if you have questions when I ask for things, tell me. I will clarify.
I'm going to tell you. We want everything that you're requesting in writing so we can make sure that we get it right, Ms. Hallam. You asked for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So again, Ms. Hallam, if you want us to provide you what you're requesting, please put it in writing to us so that we can make sure that you get it, ma'am.
Sure. I actually am really happy you bring that up because I would actually like in writing what you're going to present on when you come here. I get this really basic agenda that just says warden's report for 10 minutes. We have asked you to clarify what you're going to be presenting on. Also, with the staff deputy warden's report, there are categories, but not all of that. Can you also present that in writing ahead of time? And also, if the agenda could be sent prior to 10 a.m. the day of a meeting, that would also be helpful. Do you think we could work on that to mutually help each other out with that?
You send me what you want in writing, in an email, and we will work with the team to try to get you what you need, ma'am.
The agenda will continue to reflect what it reflects regarding the warden's report, and the reason why is because when we tell the warden what to report on, it doesn't give him the flexibility to tell us the things that he wants to report on. And as always, if you have a question about something, send it to him in writing or follow up after his report with a question. So the agenda will continue to look exactly the way it does.
I never once mentioned what the agenda looks like that I'm trying to change. What I'm trying to change is to get information on what is contained in what the agenda says. Just like I get this packet, I would like to know what is going to be presented to us from the folks who are sitting in front of us. Okay? Thank you very much. My next question is about the memorial plaque for Dr. Patterson. I was actually here when that happened. It looks like you're real excited to talk about it, so please answer. What's up with it?
I want to wait for you to finish your question first, ma'am.
What's up with it was the question. What's up with the plaque?
Nothing's up with the plaque. What I would like to do is consult with the family members first to see if they still approve of the plaque going up. So I will contact the family members, and if the family members agree to put it up, I'll put it up tomorrow.
Okay, great. That is a commitment that we have from you?
If I hear from the family members that they have no objections to the plaque going up, it'll be up tomorrow.
Do you have any reason to believe that they have objections to it going up?
I'm not going to get into that, ma'am. Let's contact the family, and if they have no issues with it, I will take care of it.
Okay, have you had communications with the family about this plaque?
Years ago.
Okay, and what was the reason that it didn't happen when we talked about it in this board years ago?
As Mr. Kinslin said, COVID hit us.
I understand the COVID hit. I was here for that as well. I'm wondering what that had to do with a plaque being installed on a wall. The jail didn't shut down, did it?
Somewhat, the jail did shut down during COVID. So the plaque didn't go up, as Mr. Kinslin said, because of COVID. And as I said, Ms. Hallam, I'm going to contact the family members. And if the family members have no problem with it, we will put it up, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for that, Warden Harper. So next, I know every meeting we talk about how Yins aren't in compliance with the solitary confinement referendum. I'm not even going to push on that. I just have a couple questions. If we could just talk about the process by which you document what is posted on the website in compliance with the solitary confinement report. You know, the thing that says how many facility-wide lockdowns, how many pod lockdowns. Can you please talk about the process for documenting those instances? Yeah, sure. So I want to know how the report that is compiled about the solitary confinement that happens at the jail, how that report comes to be. Who puts it together? Where is it logged internally in the jail? How does it come to live on the website?
Ms. Hallam, what I would like to do is have that information available to you at the next meeting so I can make sure that you get all of the information that you need, okay?
Sure, next question. So how and where specifically are lockdowns documented? Instead of talking about the whole process, since it seems you're not prepared to talk about that, can we just talk about maybe the pieces of it to see if you know any of the answers to those? I just really hope somebody knows about locking down the jail. And we have like 5 administrators here from the jail, and none of you
We do know
can
about it,
answer
Ms.
that.
Hallam, but I don't think that it's appropriate to discuss that in this forum, Ms. Hallam.
Do you complete a form or a document every time a lockdown happens?
There is documentation that's filled out, yes.
For every single one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, who has the authority to decide if a lockdown happens? Could any corrections officer decide that? Is it the warden? Is it a deputy warden?
It's authorized through a member of the administration.
Okay, and who does that include? Deputy wardens, captains?
Majors, deputy wardens.
Majors and deputy wardens only? Okay,
And the warden himself, of course.
okay. So the warden is aware of every single lockdown that happens? Okay. Does he participate in that decision for the lockdown to happen, or is he just made aware of everyone?
He's made aware of them, yes.
Okay. What about whenever the documentation from the medical providers when someone is locked down for the mental health solitary confinement that you all do? Is there different documentation for that when you're locking someone down because of a mental health reason?
The medical professional's documentation would be in their health record.
That's what I'm asking. It's not in a separate form or document, it's just in the person's patient file?
Right.
Okay. How do you keep track of how long a person has been held in solitary confinement specifically for mental health reasons then, if it's just in their file?
If they have a reason that they're being denied recreation, then they're required to be evaluated every single day.
Every day, okay. And who does that evaluation?
One of the psychiatric providers.
Okay. And I know you use provider very broadly. What positions specifically are able to make that everyday certification?
A nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant, or a physician.
Okay. And what's the process for releasing someone from mental health solitary confinement?
One of those people's evaluation determines it.
Okay, so the same way that they stay in is the same way that they get out? Okay. And then what about the folks who are in solitary confinement for behavioral reasons, court appearances, transfers to or from restricted housing? Those are exact quotes from the report. What about the documentation for that?
Are you asking about the recreation logs?
No, I'm talking specifically about when the solitary confinement report is posted on the website, it says reasons why the person's held in solitary confinement, and as some of the reasons have been behavioral reasons, court appearances, transfers to or from restricted housing. So I'm wondering how those specific reasons for lockdowns are documented.
So I think that's what the warden was referring to, the overall process. But generally, the daily activity, the daily recreation logs, when they're generated, if somebody doesn't get to that 4-hour threshold, it's reported at that point, okay?
Like when the day ends? How do you know that they're not going to get it?
It's a day log, so it's at the end of the day. Right.
So if it's like, I don't know, 8:05 p.m. and you know the person hasn't been out all day, you're saying that's when you'll go and report it because you know there's not 4 hours left in the day?
We could still get them recreation at that point, but by that.
4 hours?
Sure, yeah, we can run it into the night shift if we have to. We try and get it done before that.
But Ms. Howland, that's something that I would not like to continue going forward in this setting. That's something that I really would like to have a meeting about to talk about these issues. Chief Beeson answered a lot of your questions, but
I have one more about it. What, I know we've talked before about the partial day lockdown. When you say a partial day lockdown, does that person get 4 hours out of their cell that day?
It would depend on where the lockdown is affected.
yeah, it depends.
So, but I'm just asking, when I read partial lockdown on the report, what does that mean?
That means that the facility was in lockdown for a part of the day.
But why, but what you need to report is when someone has not been allowed out of their cell for at least 4 hours a day, right?
Right.
So why would you even tell me about the jail being partially locked down for part of the day if there was still enough hours in the day to get rec?
Because if that partial lockdown affected our segregation units or our mental health units, then recreation isn't going on in those areas. So that may result in somebody not getting the 4 hours of out of cell time.
So when I read partial day, what that means is it's the same as a lockdown? I'm just not really understanding how you're locked down. Because, for example, if I'm locked down for half the day, right? Let's say it's locked down for half. Why can't they get rec in the second half of the day?
Because we have to have medication passed, we have to have dinner served. I mean, there's other things that we have to do besides get recreation done.
So I think you will get a better understanding of the process if we meet in private, Ms.
Man, you
Allen,
keep
instead of
saying,
so
you're funny.
Ms. Allen, what he's saying is there's a lot of working parts.
It's a lot of working
involved with
parts.
this. So for us to sit here and try and go through that process isn't fair to the process.
So if I see partial day, then can I assume that that means that no one got 4 hours out of their cell?
No, I
that day?
can't say that. That's why I said we would have to look at each particular instance to see what the reasoning was, how long did the partial lockdown, you know what I mean? There's no black and white answer for that question.
Okay, so you're saying it's not a yes or no question, did they get 4 hours out of their cell or not?
No, what you're asking me about the partial lockdowns without specific instances for me to be able to speak to. That's why the warden is asking that if we could.
I can give you some
We can
examples.
talk about the entire process, and I think that'll answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you examples. Like, for example, in April, it said in the report that the jail submitted, 29 times there was a partial day lockdown. In May, 18 times there was a partial day lockdown. In June, 15 times there was a partial day lockdown.
Ms. Allen, we would like to meet with you in another meeting to discuss this in its entirety.
And I would like you to answer questions for this body.
And we are not prepared at this time to answer those
Do you
questions.
see how much I prepare for these meetings? Why can't you do the same? Okay, next question is, I have been getting a really scary number of reports lately about medication not being received. Folks going 2-3 days, sometimes a week at a time without getting their medication. And I'm wondering, what is the process to remedy that? So if I get a report that someone hasn't been getting their medication, what do I do about it?
This is the first time that I'm hearing about individuals not getting the medications that they're supposed to get.
This is not the first time we've even talked about it.
So, Ms. Howland, when you get information like that, if you could advise the jail real time as opposed to waiting to the Jail Oversight Board so we can investigate it, it would be greatly appreciated.
I am asking you so that I can do that. Please tell me, what is the process for letting the jail know that people are not getting their medication?
You can email Dr. Brinkman, myself, the team here.
And can you promise me there will not be any retaliation against the person for reporting it to me or their family?
Nobody retaliates at our jail, and if they do retaliate, we do take discipline on the individual, so we don't retaliate, ma'am.
At the last Jail Oversight Board meeting, which you were present at, there was specific, Aaron Tipton was specifically referenced multiple times by public commenters. And were you not here for that? Because they talked a lot about him not getting medication and treatment that he needed.
Ms. Hallam, again, if you have any information about individuals not getting their medications real time, we would greatly appreciate it so we can look into it.
But I just want to clarify, you just said this is the first you've ever heard that that was an issue.
This is the first that I've heard about you stating that individuals in our jails not getting medication for 2-3 days. This is the first that I'm hearing of that. Yes, ma'am.
Have you heard that from other people?
This is the first that I'm hearing about any individual not getting medications for 2 or 3 days.
And I am telling you that at the very last meeting we had, public commenters said that.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and argue about that, Ms. Hallam. All I'm saying is I want to make sure that I'm providing quality health care. When you get that information, send it to us.
Definitely.
Thank you.
No further questions, Judge Halsey.
Any further questions? Mr. Baker. Mr. Clark. Sheriff Kraus. No. Gail Moss. Any questions?
No, I did, but it's too late.
Well,
Then go first.
Judge Lazare is not here for
Because you
old
don't have
business.
to.
There is no new business, given the motions that we made that were made and approved last meeting.
Judge Halsey, I would like to read Judge Lazare's report.
Sure.
Okay.
I know you had it. Sure.
Thank you very much. Okay. The status of the jail population as of 4:30 on August 1st, 2023 was as follows. 1,550 folks were in the Allegheny County Jail and 137 were in alternative housing facilities, excluding any people with holds by the federal government. 6% or 100 people in the jail itself are serving a county sentence as the result of a new conviction. 23% of people in alternative housing, 31 of 137, are serving a county sentence. 22%, 345 people in the jail, had a hold from an external jurisdiction, including other counties or the state. No individuals in alternative housing have a hold from another jurisdiction. 41%, or 640 people in the jail itself, were detained by Allegheny County adult probation. These individuals were detained for violating probation on a crime for which they had previously been convicted. Of those, 87%, or 555, were determined to be moderate or high risk to reoffend based on their probation proxy risk score. The remainder were being held for a variety of reasons, including violent felonies, awaiting mental health commitments or service plans, and other reasons related to their own safety or the safety of the community. 26%, 35 of 137 people in alternative housing were detained by Allegheny County adult probation. 86%, 30 of 35 of those detained in alternative housing were of moderate or high risk based on their proxy score. 27 individuals in the jail itself have been court-ordered to be seen by the Behavioral Assessment Unit for evaluations, reevaluations, and pending commitment hearings to Torrance. 22 are male and 5 are female. These individuals seen by the Behavioral Assessment Unit were seen in the jail itself and not alternative housing. 26 individuals in the jail itself are committed to Torrance State Hospital and awaiting admission. Additionally, 26 individuals currently at Torrance State Hospital are wards of the Allegheny County Jail. No individuals in alternative housing are awaiting Torrance State Hospital commitments. 27%, or 431 people in the jail itself, were held pretrial only, meaning they had no other reason, such as external holds or detainers, keeping them in the jail. Of these people, under 2% screened as low risk for reoffense based on the Allegheny County locally validated pretrial risk instrument without consideration of the seriousness of the current offense. 14%, 19 of 137 people in alternative housing were held pretrial only. None screened as low risk for reoffense based on Allegheny County's validated pretrial instrument. 107 individuals, approximately 7% of the jail population, are currently being held in the Allegheny County Jail pretrial only on monetary bonds. Of these individuals, only 11 screened as low risk for new criminal activity. Only one individual in alternative housing was held pretrial only. Only one individual in alternative housing was held pretrial only on monetary bonds, and this individual was not low risk for reoffense. All pretrial monetary bond cases are reviews for possible bail modification. And also, Judge Halsey, if we're in new business right now, before we move on, I would like to ask if Ms. Duffala could introduce herself and kind of give us an update on what she has done in her liaison position so far.
Not here for that. That wasn't part of the agenda. She just came to observe the meeting.
Is she going to, moving forward, be a regular agenda addition so that we can hear from her?
I'm sure that everyone will sit down and figure out what her job description is and how that relates to the agenda. I'm not at liberty to discuss that, but she was kind enough to come and meet with everyone, so you had an opportunity to ask her those questions earlier. So with that being said.
It wasn't questions. I just wanted her to introduce herself.
With that being said, Sheriff Kraus.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Mr. Pilar.